it sort of, in some ways, does a segue, a little bridge build into the world of confidentiality.
Mm.
And this notion of, when is it fully confidential? When is it that I may have to share that someone said something to me and I have to do something with that because of harm to self or harm to others? And sometimes we don't think about that as a mentor. Wow, I'll never get into a situation where I have to do any of that kind of stuff. And I go, rewind. Let's take a look at that statement. So the notion of tools, techniques, ideas around confidentiality, even if you want to share, tell some aspects of confidentiality, but let's just explore that if you're willing for the next 10 minutes or so and see where we go. How's that sound? Silence means
well, I can kick it off because I am bound by the Human Resources Institute of Alberta Code of Ethics in order to operate under the Chartered HR Professional designation. That's always been an important piece for me to monitor in myself, and yet I also know that there is value in guiding the person that's in the conversation, whether it's mentee or coachee, to an awareness that they're treading into territory where I would see a flag going up that maybe counseling is actually a better modality to help them where they're at right now. So it's that fine line of recognizing that this is something that is not really a psychological challenge so much as a mental health challenge, and making sure they get the appropriate supports. My role would basically be to guide them to seek it out themselves, though, or to approach their manager to ask for that support, or approach their HR department. And here's what I'm seeing and why I'm concerned about it. Same thing with ICF, International Coach Federation, confidentiality ethics. You might get asked to, because you're being paid by the company to actually provide coaching services, you might get asked something that is basically part of that client confidentiality. So again, referring them back to the coachee, or in this case, we're talking about mentees, so that they can ask them and not break confidentiality with me, because it is such an important element within the conversation. It only has to happen once and the trust is completely eliminated. And we all know that trust takes, a long time to build, but a heartbeat to break. Is that what you were looking for?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Doug?
I can come at it from a couple different approaches. One is that I actually had an individual that I was being asked to mentor, and the first questions or the first words out of his mouth were, how much of what we talk about is going back to my manager? And it took a bit of convincing to get him to understand that the relationship that we had, mentor-mentee, was one that was cloaked in confidentiality, and that whatever he told me stayed in the room between the two of us. And so I think I know we got to a place where he was starting to open up and get more comfortable in that. But what ended up happening is he decided that he didn't have time to be mentored. So we ended up, for the time being, parking that relationship. I do know that his manager is very adamant that he will eventually be back on the table to be mentored, and we'll deal with it then. So confidentiality, that was the one thing. Another time that I had it, and you had talked about harm to self and harm to others, and recognizing kind of, okay, what am I going to do in this particular situation? And I actually had an individual that I was asked had asked me to do some business mentoring, help them start a business and so on, and go through all of that. And in our conversations, I was getting that my intuition was telling me that here was a person that didn't believe in themselves. So self-doubt, self-confidence. And so when I said, so the services that you provide, do you feel comfortable in providing those, and what do you feel is going to be your level of success? And the response I got back was one that was no self-esteem, no confidence. And so when I turned around and I said, how are we going to be able to market what you offer if you don't believe in those services yourself? And anyhow, to make a long story short, I did some more exploring and I found out that she was dealing with some mental health issues. She had severe trauma as a child growing up. She was seeking professional help. She was going for all kinds of therapy and counseling and all of that. And it was all wrapped up for her so that all of that was being provided. But the one thing that was missing was somebody that would just listen and hear what she was experiencing and would stand beside her no matter which path she chose to take. And that was the role that the mentor had. And we did that with the understanding that there was that, once again, that cloak of confidentiality, that she could feel comfortable sharing with me whatever she wanted to, but it stayed between us and wouldn't be shared, obviously by name. I wouldn't go and say whatever her name was. I wasn't going to say, well, this is what this person's dealing with and all of that. So confidentiality for me is a cornerstone to effective mentoring, to what it is that we do. It's something that is it's not a maybe, it must take place. And I have a responsibility as a competent mentor to make sure that number one, I address it, and number two, I make sure that confidentiality is part of our relationship.
Yeah. And I think that as someone who's just getting into these kind of conversations, it's perhaps easy to take the thinking that, because my client is paying me to do this, I therefore owe them the obligation of sharing everything. No, it's a triad. And by helping the person have the confidence to take the issue, if it is an issue between them and their sponsor who's paying for the services, to help them learn how to have those conversations is something that they'll never forget. And so that is of significant value to the organization anyway, because they're learning.
Yeah.
If it's a case of self-harm, then, and the person hasn't, and I've asked or suggested that they take this to, maybe they have an EAP session or, explore it, and they haven't taken action on it, then I would, in good conscience, I would be bringing up the fact that I'm concerned and I'm worried, and therefore, we have to either sever the relationship, or we're going to have openness about the conversation that there are certain things I need to take forward, which is an ethical boundary and a health concern. And the fact that they know I'm going to be taking it forward and have a chance to comment on it before that happens, that's basically protecting them from themselves. Hasn't happened very often, though.
Yes.
One is all you would need.
Yeah. Then sets up a different world for yourself. I only learned a very valuable lesson at one point in time. It wasn't from a mentoring point of view, but it was a lesson learned about facilitating and in a group, and that will not happen in my life again because there were some people who were hurt, and that I got that. So in my mentoring, coaching work that I've done, I haven't had to deal with anything at this point in time, and I'm not asking to deal with it, all right? But I'll just acknowledge that at this point. But if I could add, there's the confidentiality of the stories you as a mentor share about how much you're going to give away about who you are and what you have done, right? There is a confidentiality aspect to that as well. Not always about it. Yes, there is what the mentee is sharing with you and telling you, but there's also what stories you bring out and how far do you bring the characters to life. And because sometimes you may be sitting there, and I know, Doug, you do mentoring with a group and they all work together. So there's things that you learn, and I know you don't step over the bound. I get that. But there are others that, oh, whoops, I think I just slipped something out. I shouldn't have slipped. Oh my goodness, now what do I do, right? So any thoughts about you as the mentor sharing what level of confidentiality about what else you know, right? Any thoughts there?
Well, one thing I would comment on is, having gone through the situation of being in senior HR roles, you know things, right? And so you have to practice your pan face, right? Because you just cannot unknow some of those things. And a similar situation can very easily come into play with mentoring or with coaching, where you're being asked by an external person for feedback about a situation or about how the person's doing, etc. And it is an art, but it's critical that you retain the confidence.
Well, like if you're working with a group of people and that person asks you a question that is a bit of a leading question about what else is happening in that workplace, the pan face, I cannot comment on that again, but cannot comment on it. Does that answer the question?
Well, I wouldn't generally say can't comment on it so much as I would say, you need to get that information directly from the leader for that department.
Right. So the technique is how to then deal with that questions being asked because of what it is that you're sharing. There's a lot, there's a dance there. There's a dance there. Yeah. Doug, you were going to say something?
Well, I was just, because what this does is reminds me of the process that I use for culture assessments to determine mentor readiness in an organization. And I've had that where I've identified some sore spots that need to be that have come from the employees, that need to be brought to management's attention without getting the employees reaching the confidence that I have with them, but also without getting them into trouble with management as well. Excuse me. And I think it's comes back to what you had said, Yvonne, is it's a selection of words. So how do I frame this in a context that I can share it, but not mention names or get anyone into any trouble and end up, derailing what we're trying to accomplish. And so in a lot of cases, it's what I typically will tell them up front, management, is that I will come back to you with the results of my findings, but they are going to be at a very high level, and I will have them I will put them in silos. So it may be that communication as a whole is a challenge for the organization. Here are some solutions. It may be that leadership as a whole is a challenge for the organization. Here are some solutions that you can put into place. And so dealing with it from that aspect. So I'm maintaining the confidentiality with the employees who have provided me with the data that I need to be able to make some decisions or suggestions as to why there's all these pain points and why we need to fix some of them before we implement mentoring. So it's all of those things.
Now I'm recognizing time, Yvonne. Can you just remind me?
Yeah, I have to hop off and just validate that I did get accepted into the meeting. I think I'm at noon. So if I don't hop back, hopefully what I have shared today was valuable, and I will be talking to you guys at the end of the week.
Well, thank you. And again, next 10 Wednesdays at 10 o'clock Mountain, we will be doing this, and we're going to be inviting and see if we get some more and more and more people on to have conversations with us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Yvonne.
Yeah, so maybe what we can do is just shift over. We've talked about the confidentiality, and thanks to Yvonne and her insights. Can we just do just a little connection with the work that you're doing right now and what we're doing with the international mentoring community around the Journey Mentor? And I'll leave it up to you how you would like to go, and then I'll add in some thoughts, or you ask me questions. But can you, I'm going to put you in the driver's seat of the bus, and I'm just going to go sit in the seat just off to the side here, and I'm just going to go with you. So where would you like to go around that connection?
So we've identified the need, and I've gotten this from a lot of the research that I've done and people that I've spoken to, but we've identified the need for mentoring to play a part in the support structure for mental health post-traumatic stress. And so when we take a look at, we have the Certificate of Achievement mentoring and the Certificate of Competence mentor as our two certification processes in existence today. And what I felt and what we've felt that is missing is sort of the next step. So how, when we take a look at the environment today dealing with post-traumatic and mental health and all of that, what can we do from a mentoring perspective, and more importantly from a mentor certification perspective, to provide mentors with the tools that they need to be able to be part of that support structure, and to be obviously recognized as someone who can navigate through that PTS and mental health perspective. And so that's where the Journey Mentor comes into play. Is that's somebody that has the knowledge that you get at the Certificate of Achievement mentoring perspective, who also has the practical application of that knowledge in a number of different ways, that has that practical application as a result of the Certificate of Competence mentor. And then now with looking at the aspect of the work that we're doing, the research and building the Journey Mentor profile to have the elements that we need in there to have it as kind of that next step. So a Certificate of Competence Journey for Journey Mentor would give you those extra tools, tips, and techniques to be able to deal with that, as well as being able to act as the guide for people wanting to go through the certification process. So it's kind of the two pieces. And it's also obviously going to be somebody that has a more diverse background in mentoring and has accumulated a number of hours mentoring in a number of different industries, so on and so forth. So that's kind of where I think we've kind of landed right now. Thoughts?
Very true. And there is this notion of knowing, using the word boundary. When you're mentoring, there still is a boundary around this educating approach. And when you start walking close to the line and you step on it, step over it, you can be in another educating approach. Mm-hmm. One of the good ones to understand is counseling, is that from a mentoring point of view, and what we're doing from the international mentoring community perspective, is we're not going to get you to become a counselor. That's not what we're doing. We're saying from a mentoring point of view, being able to be the guide on the ride, to give some insights to the person so that they can start to reflect on where they are, what's going on. Then they can make a decision, all right, of I know I need a counselor to be able to deal with some of the things that I'm dealing with, and or just bring to their awareness that there is a person who's a counselor. But the boundary also goes to the point of understanding, well, coach, or now hang on a minute, as a mentor, when I go into being a coach, there is a boundary I'm crossing. And one of the things that I always say is then declare you're going into that. Like, I would not declare me, unless I had counselor training. I'm not going to declare I'm now in my counseling mode,
Right.
because that would not make sense. But I can declare I'm going to go into the coaching, or I'm going to go into facilitating, or I'm going to go into training, or I'm going into consulting. There are some ways in which you can declare where you're going. But the importance is you got to declare it, not assume that the person's following you gets it. Right? Because when I do my facilitative mentoring, when I move into facilitating, I say into that aspect of asking the person questions because I want to gather insights. While it may be taken as something that is part of mentoring, depending to the degree that I'm using, I will say, no, look, I'm going to flip into my facilitating, and I'm going to use that to draw ideas, because I may ask you to go out and talk to other people and bring that in, and maybe some of those people need to come in and we need to talk. I'm going to draw that in, versus as a mentor, I'm asking some questions to get at some of it, but there's again a deeper technique around facilitating. So the boundary aspect of the journey mentor is so important to be able to understand that. And to the 2 points, one for the mental health, the PTSD, right? But also helping someone to become a certified mentor. That's what we call a journey mentor as well, because they're going to run up against things. There are people who go through a verification of their knowledge and skills is enough to go, what's going on here, right? And to be able to know as a journey mentor how to support that person, right, for that moment, there could be some mental health things that get triggered, and that's why Doug, with a lot of the work that he has done, and this is a shout out to Doug, folks, that he's been able to frame up what we now accept as the base journey mentor profile, and that we're going to be making it available for the world at this point in time. So that boundary piece, I just wanted to really, obviously I've emphasized it here, but it's important.
Yeah, it most definitely is. And I think that I've had situations that I could use as examples of where that has actually been done. And certainly with, a couple of stories that I shared, certainly the one story dealing with the business mentoring and the person already going through mental health issues and receiving help already. My role in all of this, and it still is to this very day, because we actually still have a relationship, is to listen and hear. Non-judgmental, listen and hear. And where I feel or get that my intuition kicks in and says, I don't think we're out of the woods yet, it's then to ask some more questions to be able to figure out, do I need to get in touch with their immediate family to say, please pay a little bit more attention, to whoever. My intuition is telling me that there may be something there, but always, always, always making sure that I don't diagnose, I don't prescribe, that I don't cross the line, that I know where my boundaries are. I know what my comfort level is, but more importantly, I need to know what my boundaries are, because my comfort level may be beyond what the boundaries should actually be. And I've had those situations as well where I have gone into a mentoring session only to have the mentee break down because of a personal situation in the family, and thinking, oh, I can fix this, I can save the day, only to realize, back off, be the support, listen and hear, and make sure they get the counseling that they need to get the professional counseling, and they did.
Yes. Yeah. I guess the same caveat, just because you think you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
That kind of idea. So, well, thanks for that. Appreciate that. The we're moving towards the closing down of the second hour of our conversation. I really appreciate it. It's been great. We've explored a couple of topics, talked about some tools and techniques, things to truly be aware of to improve focus and strengthen our the practice of mentoring. I think it's great. And as we start to move towards this close down, Doug, is there anything that you would like to share about what we've chatted about today?
No, I think that in today's world, we don't take the time to have conversations like this that have meaning and that have that depth to them. And so breaking them down the way we have with, the first hour can be for individuals who are just thinking about beginning their journey as a mentor, or for people that perhaps have limited experience in the mentoring space. And then fast forward to the last hour, which is the more in-depth tips, tricks, tools, techniques, and storytelling about actual real life situations that, here's how you could apply these tools and tips and stuff like that. I think that I just wish that when I was starting my mentoring journey that I had something like this to be able to kind of plug into and say, oh yeah, I remember that now. Okay. And so I think it's a great place, and it's a great format for those that are listening in to sort of say, I think I want to come back next week because I'm not sure, and maybe I'll think of something in the interim that I can send into Stephen or Doug and get added to the agenda. So I think this is a golden opportunity to get a better understanding of mentoring, of effective mentoring, the processes and the concepts, and how you can apply them in everyday situations.
Yes. Well, the other thing that we're going to do is in the show more notes with the being on YouTube and wherever else the video gets shown, we're going to be putting a couple of websites up for you. One would be the Mentoring Library. And so it's wealthmovement.com/mentor library. No, mentoring library, sorry, mentoring library, mentoring-library. We also are putting together some workshops, and they would be at wealthmovement.com/mentor-workshops. If you're looking at the certification, then the best place to start is wealthmovement.com/mentor-schools, and then that'll take you in, and you can just follow the sequence. So there's lots of ways that you can step into moving forward with your mentoring. And there are other ways like this. The next 10 Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, Doug and I, for the most part, because maybe Doug has to not come for one and I may not come for another, but for the most part, we're going to be available to have these conversations, these community conversations about mentoring. And we're inviting the community in, right? Because I think there's three things that I just like to share about why we're doing this community. And there are elements of this this notion is that there's a disregard for status. This is not about, well, this is only for C-level executives, or no, this is for the front shop or something. It's not about that. Mentoring is about the mentoring, and we're not talking about the status aspect of this, okay? Then there's the community is formed around a domain of common, like the level of commonness, that some of it could be concern. Well, I'm not sure about what's happening around mentoring, but it can also be the domain of appreciation. What's working really well and being able to share from that perspective, that joyful perspective. And the last piece is that it's very inclusive. We are opening this up so that all can have introduction to mentoring. We do our best to be inclusive of all the possibilities. One of the key phrases, and we used it today, is we're not into the place of doing harm for self or others, and we're working within the realm of the ethics that we share as human to human. That's where we're coming from. But there will be times we don't agree with each other about use of words or the use of a technique. And we sometimes will get those blank looks on each other's faces and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's about being inclusive, right? And being able to deal with the diverse perspectives. And we welcome those from those who are listening in. And Doug made an excellent point. Send us your questions. If there's something you want to learn about, we'll put it into either the first hour or the second hour. We'll do what we can to get it answered. And if it requires a little bit more of a faster response, then one of us will get a note to you about what we can do. And so with that, Doug, last thought.
No, this has been great, and I look forward to next week.
I do as well. And as I end most of my videos, take care.